Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. Since a near-death experience, I have the gift to communicate with subtle levels of the cosmos. The knowledge from these for us invisible forms of energy I capture in my books, and it is now a great pleasure for me to share this knowledge, these conversations, with you as a supplement to the books. Please excuse me if the terms and articulations are not perfect. Our mother tongue is German, but we try to translate it to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
My dear friend and teacher, finally I get to take a closer look at the subject of soul fraction retrieval. We have now learned that souls can split for a variety of reasons, and that a large part of the soul, along with the soul core, resides in the waiting area, while a fraction of the soul, or even several, are in the lower levels, which we have just all discussed and traveled. Stop. A question that has always occupied me, and which I hope for me and for every listener here to answer, is now: how do we find soul and soul fragment reunited? And above all, do they need to do this at all? I ask you to start reporting about it.
So when souls split into different parts, then it's not a nice state for the soul, and of course for the fragments too. These souls can therefore only end up in the waiting room, in a state of waiting for a change of state, and by no means the state of the soul's growth in the upper levels. The soul fragments are like lost parts of your body. And of course the soul can, so the part that possesses the soul core, only then continue to change in the sense of ascension when the fraction or the fractions have become part of him again.
Yes, that makes sense, and it means no soul whose part stays somewhere in another frequency range can ascend and, for example, enter into the plane of the White Brotherhood or something, or even become masters of light, right?
Correct. The energy field must be healthy and powerful in its own right to be able to undergo this kind of transformation. Therefore, it is essential and absolutely necessary that the soul retrieves its soul fragments.
Yes, and how does that work?
To keep this complex process clear, I want to describe the different paths individually. The best thing these souls can do on their soul retrieval journey is to become aware of this distortion and to retrieve this lost part. When these souls feel therefore that something is missing, thus they begin the calls, the search, the longing for this part. And this resonance is perceived by the soul fragments. You must not forget, both are still connected to each other, so fragmentation is ultimately a division of the soul into different levels. So the soul core is in the waiting room, but one or more parts are on the other levels. And that means that this soul as a whole is scattered across many different frequency ranges.
I understand that. And if from the soul core, where the free will ultimately sits, an impulse of return is sent, does it work then? Or how should I imagine this? How exactly does this calling happen?
This is a very nice question, my dear. Thank you for that. The souls begin to reflect on the realization that they are missing a part or even parts, to go into a kind of longing. There, at that moment, you begin to create a conscious kind of attraction for what you are missing. And these resonances are felt by the soul fragments. So it's really like a kind of pulling back to oneself. Can you say that? Yes. And do these soul fragments then move quickly back to the soul or slowly? Are there obstacles? They usually move quickly. This is a process that, in your world, happens in a fraction of a second, namely exactly at the moment when the soul feels the longing for wholeness again. Once this starts, the resonance of the lost part is immediately moving back to its home. All of this still means transformation in the souls, because if you imagine the soul power is just an energy which exists about half, and she notices, or I better say she feels the longing for her lost parts and begins resonances of begging and calling. This means that energy parts, which do belong to her, but still linger in a completely different energy for a while when they come to her. There was, you'd say, a reason they split up, right? And fundamentally, not much has changed on this matter. The divergence of soul power within was the cause. A part was in resonance with the soul core, and another part was trapped in negativity, pollution, and heaviness. And this part has not improved over time in this altered state, in this separated state.
So,
this longing from the core of the soul now implies that the soul can retrieve this part by virtue of their free will and the request. But you can still imagine this means that both are still in their very own frequency, and the divergence, it still exists, doesn't it?
yes, I can imagine that. And what happens then? I mean, the cosmos is only frequency and resonance. No, I don't know, but I think the soul really needs to start working now. So, to grow, to clean, so that this part cleans too, right?
Exactly. Mostly retrieval in this way means that the souls then incarnate. In this way, you can keep the soul shape together better. Once again whole, it's easier to incarnate. And there the cleaning can be carried out, as you know, faster than on the other level.
So these souls must consciously enter a purification process in their life, addressing these negative parts, cleaning oneself, and in a way restoring the soul, lifts in its power. In this way she can use incarnation to reunite, so to speak, with this lost part of oneself. And to clean all this.
Just so.
And what happens if they can't make it? Can the soul lose the soul fragment in the body again?
That's not possible.
Oh, that means when we are incarnated, we are all whole souls, yes.
We cannot incarnate as a fraction. But I would have thought somehow now.
No.
You know why this doesn't work?
Because the soul cannot move in this state.
Oh, I see.
She is like paralyzed in this problem that different parts are distributed on different levels. A movement as a whole, certainly not into a body. It would cause another dissonance and many, many other problems.
Subtitles must definitely.
However, it is not possible anyway. Hence only souls that are mobile as a whole in the cosmos can incarnate.
But I've also experienced sessions in which I have worked with souls that had not yet regained certain parts of themselves. For example, I now have helped living people get a fraction. But if you now say they are all whole, what exactly happened?
If you carry out this work at your level, this is how you integrate the power of the soul each time. You're repairing the power of the soul. Do you understand? The soul fragment is back in the soul.
Jerk.
But she does not yet feel it is firmly integrated. You're essentially making her aware of what is already there. The power of this soul is not yet fully restored.
Being confident.
That's how it is.
So does this have something to do with consciousness?
That's how it is.
You mean they might be energetically reunited already? That they've integrated this lost part, not yet consciously there.
Not consciously integrated in their entirety, I would like to formulate.
Oh, I see.
She hasn't fully integrated it consciously. Of course, the soul has noticed this part and was able to incarnate again. But the power, she's not aware of this soul's potential power. You understand? It's like you are always walking with a stick and suddenly the stick is taken away from you. And you think you can only go as slow as with a cane.
Yes, of course. So it's not just about integrating this force, bringing this part back into the soul, but then it's especially realizing what you actually are and what everything is.
Yes, and in this process the cleaning also begins. It all belongs together. Every realization of past contamination also means purification. The balance and thus the realization and becoming whole of the power potential of the entire power of the soul. I understand. And when I have worked with these people, I have primarily worked on...
That the souls become aware of this power, their actual power again. This part that you lost but is now with you, that's the way it is. Okay, please continue.
However, there are other ways to describe the further possibilities. When the soul has fallen into this state of lost part due to different circumstances, that's how she can also peck for help. This then happens through the angels or the white balls. Whenever a soul in the waiting room calls for these tools, in the sense of asking for help, and this is what they get from these levels, then these souls enter into me. Please. The helping forces then try to strengthen the connection between soul and soul fragment. And in this strengthening of the connection is made again.
So as the next step, the soul does what it did in your first example by calling out and bringing back the piece of soul, right?
Correct, but she is not always endowed with the strength.
That means in the end the tools of the cosmos do not retrieve. The angels, the white spheres and so on don't divide such a soul break and bring it to the soul, but they strengthen the connection between the two. And how do they do that?
They link these energies through impulses, which they give into this connection, and it becomes stronger.
I see.
You know, they are not allowed to actively provide energy to the soul core or to the fragment of the soul. That would not be right. But they can strengthen the connection because it is part of the cosmos. This connection between soul and soul fragment is an integral part of the cosmic. And in this you are allowed to work.
But you once said that soul fragments can ask for help, so the fragment can call the white balls, etc.
Yes.
This is very interesting, because if he doesn't possess a soul core, how can he call out?
Sylvia, please don't confuse the readers and listeners too much. Ultimately, you can ask to gain strength in different ways, in the sense of resonance, but they are unconscious either way, and so polluted and heavy that this possibility is unlikely.
So you mean this plea does not happen in the sense of, hey, I am I and I ask for help from a light field level. But it is rather a resonance thing. If this energy feels a pulse of change within itself, the cosmos reacts correctly.
Right, well said, dear. I thank you very much. If you once again, always in your analytical thinking way, you name things in a human thinking way that sometimes are harder for me.
Yes, that's what makes our team.
That's how it is.
Okay, so I understood. The soul core's call. Of course, they consciously ask for help, while the soul fragments can't do so consciously because they lack the soul core. Since they are still part of a soul, they have a certain associated energy, and this is also perceived. Yes. Okay, so souls can ask for help, and then the connection is strengthened. That's the second way. Is there another one?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I am listening.
To reach the soul fragments, some souls move out of the waiting room.
Ah, that works.
That works.
But surely only up to the wall, right?
Yes, cleverly recognized.
And how should I imagine this? I thought they couldn't move.
Oh, yes. Of course, they can move a little. They are not rigid. But they are not so flexible as to incarnate.
I love
Do you understand
your
the difference?
attention to detail. That's it. Until next
The
time. Bye.
entire cosmos consists of an infinite number of details. That's what I meant by the topic of agility.
I got it.
Also, ultimately, a part of you is scattered somewhere in the cosmos. Of course, you can move to this part. This is a completely different form of movement than into a body, into an organism. Ha 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 ha. So they can really move to their soul fraction. Yes, really, Sylvia. And in a way, they are even looking for it. Maybe those are souls that have called a lot, that have already called the distant soul fraction through soul longing, but it has not come anyway, and where even the strengthening of the bond of helping souls might not have helped. No, most of the time the souls that do not know these helping tools, yes, they are slowly moving into these solid forms, into more solid planes, to feel the resonance of the lost part there.
That must be very uncomfortable.
Their frequency is not as high as yours, so the divergence is not as difficult for them as you might think. Certainly, in the translated sense, it will become darker and colder for you. That which you've also noticed, but still, if they want to go this way, it's possible.
I'm trying to imagine that. When we went into these levels, we did not see any souls looking for other fractions there. Why not?
Because this is actually a form that really doesn't happen often. It means a stretch of this consciousness, this energy, into the lower levels of the soul. And that, as you've noticed, costs money, much strength. This option is therefore not really often used, if you can say that. Most souls are molded in such a way that they know or even feel the help. the support of the cosmos, and they use or simply call their soul fraction. If you go this other way, but I have to use it.
Naming, understood. I'd really be interested to know what works best, statistically speaking.
The search due to movement in these low frequencies is certainly the most difficult and urgent, so that even the least successful one too. Just for your statistics, the call works best and most often. Then the request for help immediately follows. These two types are the most popular ones, as you would say.
Yes, I would understand good, but above all, go ahead that a soul first has to perceive that she is not quite herself. That's how it is. And how does that happen?
When the soul has completed different types of being and finds itself in the waiting room again, and for instance was in the bright area of the deceased before a last incarnation, and now finds itself somewhere else, then this is a sign that she has lost a part or something, as you would say. And then she can recall this by the power of free will, and would have to reincarnate immediately. There again others, those who may have never been in the brighter plane of the deceased, and therefore have no comparison. So they end up in the waiting room and feel the longing for something, perhaps the longing for incarnation, for further transformation of their energy, and often this realization means further reflections on what happened, and about these reflections, so about this gradual realization, these souls may also come into the area where they notice that something is not right.
And then they manage to recall this soul fragment on their own, or they call for help.
So high it is.
I thought that this kind of soul retrieval is only done in the body.
But in the body, the soul and fraction of the soul are fully restored to their power. As I have already said, retrieving the part merely implies that, let's call it having the amputated leg back and being able to act as a whole again. But that doesn't mean we can run again. All these mechanisms in the soul, cleaning, wholeness, greatness, enlargement, increase of power, and so on and so forth, is everything possible in the body, and only in the body. In the body. And of course rituals also help. You yourself know how much one can cleanse parts of oneself in rituals.
Oh yeah. That means we may all be a mix of different or a fraction in our own way, with different degrees of contamination that we each carry within us, and of course the soul core. And can we, about being human, being in organism, this retrieval, this reunion of the parts carry out and ultimately complete?
Yes, and I repeat, only in the organism.
Yes, but it makes sense. We are like dependent on each other and can now use the time in the cocoon body to become one again, to become a frequency.
Subtitles by the MRO community. But weren't there also these lumps in the lower levels? And we said in this context that it can certainly happen that these clumps develop their own consciousness, their own size, their own mass, and then somehow reincarnated, somehow incarnate.
Yeah, somehow.
What is that then? Being confused.
But I didn't think that could happen. You said that only a complete soul can reincarnate.
The cosmos is diverse. And of course it also happens that these fractions develop their own dynamics, completely unconsciously. And surely such incarnation happens. We've talked about these fractions attaching to other souls, but because they lack a soul core, they can't develop their own consciousness with their own soul core. That's not possible. They can certainly attach themselves to other souls on their search or in their becoming, but they will never be a soul. And even if they are many fractions, they can't become a soul with a soul core.
Yes, but that's quite complicated, I think, considering that these soul fragments only stay on this other level until they are called, and that it can also happen that they have a certain potential to adapt to another, to attach another incarnated soul. This is really complex. Essentially, they can move an attachment to an incarnated soul core, that is, to an incarnated soul, is finally a movement. That's how it is. Then they are definitely not the one from the deep down at the bottom level. It must be only those from the upper ones. So the darker upper areas, those above the wall.
Exactly. And you've recognized that very correctly.
God, this is all pretty crazy. On one hand, you have the soul that you are missing as a part of the soul hanging around in the waiting hall. And you yourself are attaching to some other soul. God, oh God. Souls can only incarnate as a whole, in an incarnated state. So in a body, soul fragments can still attach to this soul, like parasites.
Yes, unfortunately, a very beautiful parallel metaphor.
This means that these soul fragments can actually move to the level of the bodies, the physicality and the organisms.
That's what it means.
This is still a bit hard for me to grasp, but maybe you can describe something about it to me again.
Please say goodbye to it. That physicality is in a frequency level that is for souls, angels and cults. As you would say, is not reachable. You are in the frequency level of the body. Amidst these other levels, you know, the cosmos is always everything at once.
Yes.
So it means that these different frequency states exist simultaneously and, of course, around you too. So when a fraction of a soul attaches itself to another soul, well then, and above all, because he has adjusted his frequency to the frequency of this whole soul, or resonates with it, attaches to it, and accompanies it, even if they, and especially if they know him, is reinforced.
Yes, because this type of attachment does not work when this soul is in the waiting hall. That is, it is unincarnated. That's how it is. And why doesn't it work in the Vartali?
Because there the energetics are clearer. Let's say the resonances of the plane are clearer. You are in a level that includes material, physical vibration, and so many...
The soul part is attracted to this type of frequency and therefore seeks out this frequency. The level of the body. So you could say, is it that the plane of the bodies is closer to you? No. Only easier to reach, not closer. Easier to reach from the frequencies. I want to understand this a bit better now. Why? It is easier to reach in terms of frequencies if the high vibrating levels really can't be reached by consciousness, because you're either vibrating at the frequency or just not yet. Then I get it. If you vibrate as a high vibrating soul into or down to the lower levels, I get that too. This is a conscious act. But how can a fraction of a soul, which has no consciousness, no real consciousness, no soul core, how can it attach to souls in bodies?
By moving in his frequency and perceiving other frequencies. So he is in the level where he is. Let's say the lowest level, and feels resonances. That feels like home to him. Of course, he moves into such resonances. And if this resonance is physical, or a soul is incarnated into a body, then this part moves to there of its own accord due to resonance.
But they don't have a free will.
But they resonate.
You mean because it reacts passively to frequencies? Yes. So not consciously act like, hey, I want to go left, I want to go right, or I want to go up, or I want to go down, but because they are in a very unconscious state, they let themselves be attracted by a frequency or frequencies for whatever reason. And this frequency, it's not their soul, so their actual home, but it is very close, then they attach themselves for other reasons.
Mainly for resonance technical reasons only, sweetheart. There are no other reasons. May I send you a picture? Imagine a glass of water. You see the water in this glass, and beneath the water is a pond. You tilt the glass. What happens to the water? It flows into the pond. This is a resonance question. The water wants to go to the water due to the force of attraction. That's how it is to be understood.
And then it just happens, and when this soul again, cleaned up and away at some point, then comes the time when this foreign soul to which the fragment of the soul has attached itself separates again.
After this time, yes.
I would be interested in how this soul fragment perceives in this state. Does it perceive the same as this soul to which it is attached in the body? Or does he perceive all the time in his level?
A very interesting question, dear. I'm impressed by your precision. I can't really answer this question as I haven't had this experience. And even if...
Cleansed
is she...
in me, so erased. I know you don't like the word, but do you maybe have a kind of guess about it? No, should someone else be asked, right? Yes.
If I delve deeper into the problem, I suspect, to meet you, that this fraction takes the experiences of the soul with it. So it's kind of like an incarnation, but of course much different because it's much more unconsciously experienced. The energetics lives, as you said, like a parasite with the soul, to which it has attached itself.
And the whole thing surely only works because this soul still carries impurity within it.
Yes, of course. The more the soul is purified, radiant, the less it can be such. Let's say they attract parasitic fractions. One excludes the other.
Can one say that such attachments can indeed also lead to mental confusion?
Yes, unfortunately.
So once again, a call for everyone to perceive their soul, to take care of their soul. And if they encounter any blockades, please free yourself from them. When they encounter fears, overcome these and power tank in their life and not waste them. Because the more power they get, the more such possibly clinging energy particles will detach. Also say goodbye In case, now the case, one would have some. This is very exciting. So, to summarize, there are these 3 possibilities of soul retrieval, right?
Correct.
So when a soul retrieves a fragment of itself and then incarnates, then it is still important and necessary for the person to fully integrate this power back into themselves with the help of rituals or their own processes, one way or another.
Yes.
I understood that. As I said, I really thought that souls could reincarnate without the crippled, mutilating soul fragments. Okay, I got that now. Do you want to say something more about the topic of soul retrieval, soul fragment retrieval? No. Then I thank you very much now again for this very exciting, very interesting chapter. Thank you, Doshlin.
Thanks, Sylvia. Love.